your moderator for today. I am your moderator for today. I am the Policy and Advocacy Manager at GforGirls Initiative, also the co-founder at GforGirls Initiative. And if it is your first time interacting with GforGirls Initiative is a community-based organization in the Kenya-Tanzania border town of Lunga. And we work around the areas of adolescent, sexual and reproductive health rights, access to education, environment conservation, safeguarding and child protection. And one of our major projects that is ongoing now and that is in relation to this if I may call it webinar today, or learning exchange, is the transition of girls from primary school to high school. And not just the transition, but rather the registration, retention, and transition of girls to secondary school. And this is not just out of the blues, but this is because in the area where we work, there is a problem where parents prefer their male children to go to high school as an investment. But the girls, it's just like, if there's money, they will go. If the parents have money, sometimes they will not. And this is because of the cultural belief and social belief that girls are a waste of investment because they will be married, they will not work, they become housewives. So investing in their education is just futile. It is a waste of money because they will be married, they will go to another community, they will become a housewife. They've not seen any girls that are working in spaces that shows that educating girls is beneficial. So that is the context with which we are dealing with. And that is what I would tie to access to education for girls with disabilities in this program today. And the reason why it is specifically girls with disabilities is because although it is not a competition of who's more oppressed than who, in every vulnerable group, there's a group that is more vulnerable than the other. I don't know if it applies on an equal basis with girls, boys, intersex children living with disabilities, or it cuts across everyone that lives with disabilities. But I do know in every vulnerable group, there's a more vulnerable group within the group. And maybe some of our speakers might touch on it if they have different perspectives. But today we will be talking about the access to education for girls with disabilities. And the context through which we are talking about this is because education is a right for all children as provided for in our constitution, in human rights instruments, in the rights and welfare of the child. This is the protocol to the African Charter on the rights and welfare, to the African Charter. We have with us 4 speakers who I will let introduce themselves, what they do and where they come from. And maybe as we progress, they will touch on different aspects of the program. But one of the things that I would want to bring to your attention is one interesting thing that is included in the disability protocol of the African Charter. And this is the definition of persons with disabilities. Allow me a moment. This is the definition of persons with disabilities. And it includes, I'm reading directly from the protocol, which says it includes those who have physical, mental, psychosocial, intellectual, neurological, developmental, and other sensory impairments, which in interaction with environmental, attitudinal, and other barriers hinder their full effective participation in society on an equal basis with others. So maybe as our speakers introduce themselves, they can give us a little context of who is these persons with disabilities, who are girls with disabilities, but generally who are people with disabilities. Is it neurological disability ni gani? Developmental, what are they? I think most of us are quite familiar with a bit of physical, a bit of mental, a bit of psychosocial disabilities. Intellectual ni gani? Is it a slow learner? Is a slow learner a learner with disabilities? Is a person with I don't know. Maybe someone, our speakers will touch on that a bit. And then I also wanted to touch on three principles. And this is the principle of reasonable accommodation. When we are talking about access to education of these learners, if a government says, well, we have provided the best to the best of our ability, the resources are available for these learners, how can we tell if the government has provided enough or not? Based on, of course, reasonable accommodation and progressive. There's a principle of progression when providing this. That is means they are allowed to do it slowly according to the resources they have. Can we say that your slowness is too slow when you're providing for these rights? And of course, the principle of non-discrimination and equality before the law, that all persons are going to be treated equally, regardless of their race, their ability, their gender, their religion, their culture, everything else. So before I make it a podcast, I would like to invite all our speakers, and I would want to start with allow me a moment. I would want to start with Buddy, then Safin, Eve, and Felix. Oh, wait, before our speakers, I would like to invite Haron to introduce himself as my colleague in this Zoom in case I drop out yeah. So Haron will start, and then Buddy, Safin, Eve, sorry, and Felix. Finally, Felix, introduce yourselves. What do you do? And maybe touch a bit on what I've spoken about the principles and the definition of persons with disabilities. Karibu sana. Was I on mute?
Oh my God, sorry. Yeah, it was muted. But oh, awesome. Thank you so much, Elsie. Thank you so much, Team G4Girls Initiative, for this awesome engagement and for focusing more on fostering social inclusion in all part of your engagement. I highly appreciate that, and thank you so much for engaging me and bring these collaborative approaches together so that we can ensure these voices are kind of highlighted and amplified at not only at the national and regional engagements. My name is Harun Madena Miesi. As I said earlier, I'm from Kilifi County of Kenya, but currently I'm within Nairobi. I'm the founder and managing director of Collaborative Approach, which it's a hybrid consultants firm focusing more on issues of gender equality, safeguarding, and social inclusion, part of it. Yeah, so all of our programming, we're purely aiming to amplify social inclusion in everything we do. And one of our services is network of the grassroots organization and movement, where some of you're part of that network. And with LC, we are part of the secretariat. We are working to develop models which will help to make sure that the most marginalized young leaders get access to this kind of dignified and fulfilling opportunities, plus also ensure that you are well positioned at not only national but also regional and global level, because something we've realized is that a majority of young leaders from the marginalized regions are doing amazing work, but they lack this kind of recognition, this kind of support and spaces or networks where they can amplify their voices. And that's how we decided to venture into this sector with my colleagues. It's been a while, doing a lot of planning since April, but now things are picking up at a very slow rate, but sure. Yeah, that's all about me. For more, you can check my LinkedIn. That's my office. And I also encourage each one of you to make sure you share your stories, what you are doing, your challenges, because you never know who is watching. And one of the testimony I can share, it's about Eve. I've been following Eve for the past, I think, 2, 3 years. We have been engaging each other virtually through via Yali and also via LinkedIn, and we have never met in person. So the moment Elsie approached me about the PWD engagement, I was like, why not engaging Eve? So Eve was the first person, and I was like, why not to bring Bad Muhammad from Kwale County, a strong advocate of the PWD. Yeah, so these are some of the colleagues we met virtually. Uh, some we have met in person, some we have not met in person, and now we are sparking these kind of collaborative approach engagements. Thank you so much, Elsie. Back to you.
Thank you, Haron. Buddy,
Good afternoon.
good afternoon.
Thank you so much. Honored, humbled, and glad to be here. Glad to hear my friend Bwana Harun.
I think Buddy just dropped because of the network from your side. You can pass it over to the next person as you wait for Buddy.
Oh, that's unfortunate. Maybe we can move on to surfing as we wait for Buddy to rejoin the meeting. Surfing. Surfing Toms. Karibu sana. Then surfing will be followed by Eve and then Felix in that order. Just a brief introduction, yeah. Surfing, over
Okay,
to
thank
you.
you. Thank
Tom.
you so much, MC. My name is Safina Kinyi Tom. I come from Nyakach. This is a sub-county in Kisumu sub-county in Kisumu County. I've met her once when we was initiating the network for grassroots organizations in Kisumu. I work basically with girls, and we do more on sexual reproductive health rights of young girls. And through that, I have been engaging with a few girls with disabilities as well. I'm a professional political analyst and a public admin. I think that's all for an introduction. Yeah, for now, I'm based in Kisumu. Thank you.
Asante sana, Surfing. Eve.
Hello guys, my name is Eve Kibare. I come from Nairobi, born and bred in Nairobi County. And I lost my sight 4 years ago due to a blood clot in my brain. I was very sighted for 31 years. So after losing my sight, before that, I was a film producer by profession, a creative communication consultant. And then I lost my sight. I started a YouTube channel in a bid to find sanity and find purpose, and also just to communicate my journey to anybody who may be going through the same thing or may go through the same thing even in the future. It's called Blind Girl Experience. It was been in operation, or it's been in existence from October 2021. I have uploaded 26 videos based on different interesting episodes. And and I've also interviewed other people who've lost their sight in adulthood. So disability can be acquired along the way and not necessarily just having been born with. With relation to the conversation that you're having, first of all, we as Kenyans at the moment, we still view disability as a burden, as a defect, as a problem, as an issue. And therefore, it becomes very hard for people to conceptualize disability as a human experience, like losing a job or getting a divorce or something. So because of that, people are having a disability. For some, it creates a barrier. It's like your mind is blocked, or it's caged up because it cannot see past the disability, whether it is you encumbering the disability or somebody else close to you. So therefore, and also we are conditioned into the patriarchal system, whereby the patriarchal system supports domination and superiority. and and capitalism also supports the same. So now the value of a human being is looked upon from a very capitalistic sense of view, whereby if you're not, the value of a human being is what are you going to bring to the table and how much profit can I get from that. And then also dominance means I have to be in charge, like the male supremacy has to be in charge of. So when it comes to girls with disability and inclusion to their education, it's almost a futile response, because from the very basic level, parents look at a child with disability as a burden, as a defect, as something we need to pray for, so that if now something changes, that's when I see the value in that child. And you'll hear people even saying that sasa huyo unajua kuna kitu we can do about it. So the value of humans, even as we are based on a very global level, is that when people look at other people from a patriarchal lens or a capitalistic lens, the value decreases and the barrier is increased, because then there is no hurry to create inclusion because I still want to dominate. There is no hurry for me to create inclusion because what's the point? They're not going to bring any value to the table. But when you look at human beings as perfect spirits, we are spirits, perfect spirits in physical form. Therefore, our spirits are not disabled. It's just our bodies, and our bodies meaning also our minds. And therefore, we need to, if we can not correct, but really elevate our minds to thinking beyond the patriarchal lens and the capitalistic lens, then we'll be able to at least see the person next to us as a human being first and as a perfect spirit first, before you start seeing their gender, their race, their ethnic group, their physical disability, and so on and so forth. That's my contribution. Over to you, Felix.
Let me unmute. Okay, thank you, Eve. You've mentioned a lot, very resourceful information. Actually, I'm also learning as I'm at the same time I'm listening. So I'm also learning a lot of things from the rest of the team. Just to start by introducing myself, my name is Felix Okuta. I'm working for Fichua networking organization. Fichua is working with the young people within the peri-urban areas of Kisumu. These young people include the MSMs. We work with the thematic areas. Our thematic area of focus include the climate mitigation and adaptation. We are doing something on the sexual reproductive health rights, and also we are doing civic education for these youthful populations. I want to say that we've interacted with we are a member of the national grassroots organization and movement of the vibrant Aaron, who is has brought a lot of energy into it. And I remember when he came to Kisumu, we had a platform, we shared a lot about our CSOs, and having such a has made us to be part of this conversation today. And I want also to thank the G4Girl Initiative. I've also listened to you, and I've really learned a lot of things based on the work that you've been doing for the girls with disabilities. What I want to say is that I know that we have the principles, and also the disabled people are also having the rights to education according to the United Nations conventions for the persons living with disabilities. They also one of the principles I know is non-discrimination against the persons with disabilities. I've interacted with quite a number of young girls with disability. We've partnered with Kibos Schools for the Visually Impaired, that is in Kisumu. In Kibos School of Visually Impaired, we've had a privilege of visiting the girls in that school. During the events like Global Youth Day, uh, we were able to share with the platform with them. We were able to distribute some resourceful information to them when we went to visit them. And one thing I realized that by using the simplest terms possible, whenever most people are speaking are saying that people with that disability have special needs, I always find that word as not according to me, the word is not that a good word to be used in the simplest term, because I know that having a privilege of interacting with the persons with disabilities, especially the young girls in that institution, I've realized that each and every person who is disabled has a particular need. The particular need, what one might need is totally different. They might be disabled just according to how my previous presenters have mentioned, but now the level of disability varies across all of them. You find that there's someone who has more needs than the other. And I noticed that um, the intellectual aspect of it, they're human. The same way you see yourself, the intellectual level does not differ at all. That it means that when somebody is disabled, that it means that is a lesser intellect or something of sort. And we realize that I realize that even the persons who are disabled have even extra intelligence, and even they are able even I was watching myself when the bell rang, and one lady, they know where they could wash their hands, they could go with their plates. And you imagine some of them were totally blind, not really partially, but totally. They did not have eyes, but they could see where they could wash their hands, pick their plates, and go and serve. So I say that it's kind of an extra intelligent that even us, we could not define how that is able to. I was surprised with how some of these was happening. It was a miracle to me, my first interaction. So having that opportunity, I learned that these we should treat them with love. We should treat them with care. We should give them an opportunity. We should share our resources that we have with them, so that they feel that they're also part of the community. Because if we think that they are lesser being and we discriminate upon them, it even lowers their self-esteem. And if you move to the aspect of the mental health, the whole thing altogether. Thank you very much, without taking much of the time, Eve and the rest of the team.
Sawa. Thank you so much, Felix. I think going forward to the rest of the sessions, I would ask every speaker to be very conscious of time, because time is not on our side, and we would like to finish. We would like to have a wholesome conversation within the time frame provided. I would want to begin with what Felix has raised, and it's some of the terminologies that he's used: special, gifted, they are human beings like the rest of us. I would want to say there's always two approaches to interacting with persons living with disabilities. And I will tie it to what Eve said before, and that is, all of us are just one step away from acquiring a disability. That is one of the things we should be conscious of, that you are an accident away from becoming a person living with disability. You are an illness away from becoming a person with disability. So instead of viewing it as an ability versus disabilities comparison, what we should see it is as a human experience that some of us get to be abled differently from others. And we should create environments that are very transformative, in such a way that if I was to wake up tomorrow and I'm blind, I'm still able to sorry, I'm visually impaired, I'm still able to continue living in the same comfort and in the same accessibility as when I had my vision, my eyesight. If tomorrow I woke up and my leg broke, I'm still able to navigate life with my disability in the same manner that I was able to navigate life before. And instead of looking at it from an empathy approach, oh my God, they must be going through such a hard time, which is true. We should look at it from a human rights based approach, which is how do we ensure that all of us in the society, regardless of our abilities, are able to navigate life and enjoy rights, enjoy living, enjoy freedoms in the same manner as others. And maybe let me just start by going straight away to our first speaker in the interest of time. And our first speaker would be Safin. And Safin would be discussing, in 5 minutes, we'll be discussing the barriers to accessing education for girls with disabilities, answering the questions of what are the main challenges of girls with disabilities in regards to access to education, and how do social attitudes and stigma impact these girls' opportunities for learning. I would want to throw in an extra aspect that is not in the program. The Children Rights Committee released a very interesting report on adolescent sexual and reproductive health. In a small, very small paragraph, introduced the concept of self-agency, that these children, if they were given the ability to choose, if they were given ability to control of their choices, this is what would happen. I would want to throw in that aspect there and ask, what role, and this also is tied to the African Charter on the Rights and Welfare of the Child, where they give children the responsibility. Like, you have the right to enjoy this, the right to education, but you also have a responsibility towards this. How do these girls with disabilities also, what is their responsibility in this, on top of the barriers that are there? What is their role in this? Take it away, Safin, in 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you so much, Elsie.
I think we have just lose one of our colleague. You can give it over, maybe a question to Eve or Felix.
Yes. Any of our speakers who would want to address the said question, as Safin has on your cards because of network issues, what are the barriers to accessing education of girls with disabilities and the challenges they face, and how do the social attitudes and stigma impact these opportunities? And finally, I added in an aspect of responsibility of these girls to enjoyment of the right. Any other speaker that would want to speak on it, since we're surfing?
I can
in
start.
5 minutes.
I can.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, part of the barriers are, from what I have observed, part of the barriers, attitudes and stigma, it
Right.
comes from the whereby these girls with disability, the interest of the parents diminishes, whereby there is no interest in pursuing any life experience for them. It can be two-sided. It can be either if the parents are preventing this child from experiencing further pain because they imagine the disability encumber them will hinder them from experiencing life to the fullest. So they prevent them overprotectiveness towards the girls. Therefore, they end up not experiencing life and making choices and even having ambitions because their parents overprotected them from experiencing further pain. So they will not go to school. They will not play in the playground because, she's blind. She'll fall, or that overprotectiveness. The second thing would be the complete detachment of that child will not offer any value to me. I'll forever be burdened by this child. So they will not engage at all from even pursuing an education. Then there's also the stereotype whereby when somebody experiences any disability, they assume all the disabilities are with that person, meaning that person cannot. It's like once they recognize this person is deaf, therefore the person is blind, the person has dyslexia, they have all the disabilities in that one person, and never try to go beyond trying to find out more about the disability and what avenues and resources and opportunities are there for this person to have a full life experience. So that stereotype of, because you're blind, someone shouts at you thinking that you're also deaf, because they assume that one disability means all disabilities. And then there is also the lack of there is ignorance, and that ignorance has also contributed to a lot of even ladies in the past, whereby they assume that because you have a disability and maybe you are a slow learner, therefore where you're like you're like, people would say you're half-wit, or you're not okay, you're not full. So that ignorance of assuming that a person with disability is incomplete, therefore there's no point of us pursuing an education because you're not complete. So there's a waste of resources and time. And what this does to the person, the girl, they end up absorbing, because when you're born into a family, you are born into their paradigm and their thoughts and their way of life. So it also affects you in how you view life and how you view yourself. So what is the responsibility of this girl? Once beyond the barriers, once this girl is able to pursue this education, their responsibility is to keep, to pursue to grow their ambition, to be able to pursue this education. But also the barriers of not having assistive devices, not having a support system, not having people, even teachers, who are acclimatized to looking at disability as a human experience and not tunasaidia hawa wasichana. It's like we are teaching. So there's a lack of just it's like they're doing it as an alternative. Like, I've even had teachers who will look for jobs in special education because there's more money there. But it's not for trying to raise the standards and the quality of standard of life for these people. So even for the girl, that lack of the other people, this being segregated also from normal school activities, you end up even your responsibility to keep up with the education can sometimes subsidize or can diminish, and it becomes a very hard push towards even employing, finishing your high school to even pursue further education beyond the required education standard. I don't know if I've made sense.
Yes, you made a lot of sense. I think the more you spoke, the more I kept thinking about how people keep us in mental chains by repeating. Sometimes when people remind you that you're discriminated, that remind you that you are oppressed, there's two aspects to it. You become aware of the oppression, or you become a slave to the oppression. So by maybe the community around you reminding you of how less you are, you also adapt that attitude of how less you are, and it keeps you from being ambitious, from pursuing your goals, from pursuing your abilities because of that. Thank you so much, Eve. You've given such wholesome, comprehensive discussion points on the topic. I see Safin has also joined us. Sorry, Safin, you will need to toroka for a minute. Maybe I'll give you 1 minute or two to touch on the subject, since Eve has covered the entirety of it. Take it away. Two minutes.
Okay, thank you so much, Elsie. I had a technical hitch. I have to apologize for that. Most likely, as a person who works with girls in most cases, I have an organization that is called Great Daughters of Nyakatsibio, and we focus majorly on young girls. And there are a lot of challenges and barriers that we see around. There is aspect of these people, these young girls are very prone to GBV cases. People tend to just manipulate them, and they are usually more exposed to GBV cases. And you find that it's very easier for these people to use, especially those who are not okay mentally. I can say people who have disabilities on their mental, they normally tend to be used so much. And then also there is that level of seeing the girls with disability to be a cost. Like we tend to see that it's so expensive to educate them. And this is very evident because if you see the special needs schools, a lot of financial implications are required. For you to have a child going to a special needs education school, you incur a lot of expenses. So it's always very expensive to educate a person with disability, especially girls, because they have a lot of requirements. And then their caregivers also have to be paid. So it's really a barrier for that case. And then there is an aspect of age. So you find that most cases, girls with disabilities start school at a very old age, because sometimes the parents takes time to think about, should we educate them or not? So in that scenario, you find that a girl who wants to be educated and they have a disability, it will take time for the parents to cope with that situation and have them in school. So I would really maybe also point out on the aspect of the level of disability, as it was mentioned earlier. So you find that some people have very complicated level of disability, and this will be really a barrier, because if you have a complicated level of disability where you need a lot of care and maybe being checked on, a lot of financial implications will be needed. And if that is the case, you will find that that will be a barrier for this child to go back to school or to be a learner. So that will be really a barrier for them to have them in school. And so I would really concur with my friend who mentioned that there are different levels of disability. You'll find that maybe someone who has maybe visually impaired and someone who has both visually impaired and physical, who cannot walk properly, they must be handled differently. So that will be really a barrier for them to access education. So I would really recommend that in our education system, we can have an inclusion program to reduce the stigmatization that we face. Because when we have these children with disabilities in school, sometimes when we have those who doesn't have disability and them at the same institution, at times they face a lot of low self-esteem and even the stigmatization aspect. So I would really recommend that if we can have a scenario where we make it very open and create a lot of awareness on inclusivity in our schools, to ensure that every child is aware that disability is not inability. So we accept even those who are having disability to be part of us. So I would really recommend that if we can have a way of making all the institutions and stakeholders aware that even these children or girls with disability are even equal to us who are not having disability. So I really emphasize that we have an aspect of inclusivity in either our syllabuses, like literally everything pertaining education. We just have an aspect of inclusivity in everything, be it in sports, the curriculum, the syllabus, and everything, to ensure that we bring all the people with disability on board in like everything that we do as a society. I think that is my submission for today. Unless there is any other aspect that input will be needed, I'm still here. Thank you so
Thank you
much,
so much,
Elsie.
Safin. I think we'll circle back to you during another session. Thank you so much for raising such important points on the challenges that persons or girls living with disabilities face. I think you brought the aspect of manipulation, SGBV, the expenses that it takes to admit these girls to learning institutions, the age disadvantage, the levels of disability, of course, where you spoke about the more complex, or the more people with abilities view it as a complex issue, the more difficult it is for these girls to access education. Haron, if you may, please. I think Badi Mwalimu says he's been on the waiting room for a while. I don't know if the technical glitch is from our end or his end, but I would want...
I've been trying to add him, but I think it's from his end. I think it's a network issues from his side. I keep admitting him, but it's keep kind of moving back.
Okay, because he was supposed to be our next speaker. I think we would skip, which I wanted to tie with the first point on inclusive education policies and practices.
I think
maybe as we wait on Buddy. Is Buddy with us?
Yeah, he's still connecting the audio part of it.
Okay, so as we wait on Buddy,
maybe
as we wait on...
Yes, go ahead.
Sorry. As we wait on Buddy, I would want us to touch on, maybe because we've spoken about, I think Eve has raised that aspect of how the family and the society views you, and Safin has also added on it. Maybe Eve and Felix, you could touch a little bit on the role of communities and families. How can they support the education of girls with disabilities, just beyond the financial means? How can they support these girls to access education? And what is the role of community-led advocacy in driving inclusive education, as we are doing here at GforGirls and all the other organizations that have joined us? What specific role do we have in advocating for this inclusive education? If you can start,
thank you
and
very
then
much.
Felix can continue, or Felix can start and Eve can continue, whichever is comfortable.
Felix, you want to start?
Okay, I'm okay. Let me start. Okay. I think when we mention the role of the communities and families, what normally comes to mind, the first thing that comes to me is the role of the family. What is the family doing? Because the family is the basic unit, and the family spend most of the time with the persons with disabilities, and you find that for the families, we have family advocacy whereby the families can also advocate for the rights of their daughters, and by emphasizing the value of education and pushing for the inclusive policies. When I say this is because Safin mentioned earlier that you find that some parents tend to take much time with their children who are disabled at home, and even they start their education very late. So if the families doesn't take that first initiative of the advocacy, because by the families accepting accepting the situation and proceeding with the enrolling of their children to the education system and starting pushing for the inclusive policies, will now in the long run, the people in the community will also be able to see the importance of girls' education, girls who are disabled, and for the community to learn from the families, and they'll be able to change they'll be able to challenge the stereotypes and the stigma coming from around. Also, if we look at the role of the communities, we have also the other support and encouragement that the families and the emotional support which is here is the family also play a very vital role in providing emotional encouragement. For this emotional encouragement, this can foster the positive attitudes and even towards the education of these children. I'm hearing some background. Is there any question? Hello?
Sorry, Felix. I think Safin, please mute yourself and any other person who's not the speaker. Kindly continue.
Okay, thank you very much. When I'm talking about the emotional support, just like I mentioned that the families play the first major role in providing this emotional support by encouragement. So when they are able to encourage the children with its disability, they are able to have that positive attitudes towards the education and learning. Remember, if your family is not able to even give you that motivation, encouraging you, telling you nice things, and also able not tending to take too much time without taking you to start attending education before you could even lose hope with life, because some of them goes through a lot of emotional, even psychological effects in the long run. If they are not able to be motivated, they are not able to be enrolled in good time. And the same support and encouragement, we also have role models. Like our children are able to see the role models even in the parliament. We have people who are disabled and they are able to demonstrate and execute their work in the assembly successfully. That is enough motivation. If they are able to get motivated, they are able to, we could see that successful integration of even somebody transforming from one stage of next life to the other. When we talk, I'm also looking at the aspect of the resource mobilization. What can the families and communities do to support educational needs? Just like I mentioned when I was starting the conversation, we have we have institutions that are responsible for the girls with disability, all children with disability. What are we doing as a family members or communities? Are we able to raise some support so that we are able to even provide transportation or even any assistance devices that could encourage them or maybe tutor them so that they also get that that need with regard to the education. When we look at even just volunteering as a community member, you can just volunteer as a tutor or as a mentor. People do it, and you provide additional support and enrichment opportunities which are able to even motivate these children to enable that they are somewhere. Taking much of my time back to Safin. Safin, if you can add something on top of that.
Also, Elsie,
Is
Bud is
Safin?
back.
Okay, thank you.
Should I go or wait for Safin?
Do continue.
Okay, well, I can give my submission
Okay.
on community aspect. I would really emphasize that as a community, we should not even wait for maybe a family to decide. We can, as well as civil society organizations, team up collectively and maybe identify some of these girls with disability and even any other student or people with disability. If they reach the age of schooling, I think we should not wait for the family members to decide. As human rights defenders, we can also come up with a framework of where we initiate capacity build the aspect of importance of having these kids with disability go to school. So if we make community aware that even if they have disability, but yes, they have a right to be educated as well. So, and for the right of this, that is my submission.
Thank you so much, Safin. Eve.
Thank you so much, guys, Felix and Safin, for your contribution. I would like to add, we need to reintroduce "It takes a village to raise a child" and abolish individualism, because it does take a village to raise a child. It does take community for us to be able to flourish and thrive. So my first my first thought would be, we as families and communities, we need to start gearing away from the patriarchal lens, where we look at girls as the end game of girls is being homemakers, nurturers, mothers, and that's the only lens we view girls as, because then it limits their thoughts, it limits their minds to being every other thing that they could be. I've been reading a book called Disability Pride, and there's Disability Visibility, and all these are people in the States and all around the world, and you can tell that these people, some of these girls are seeing them as people, as human beings who are pursuing bigger dreams. Some of them are artists, some of them are fashion designers, for some of them are filmmakers, some of them are they're scholars, some of them are advocates in just their own gifts and talents, and they're not limited because of the patriarchal lens of homemaker, nurturer, and mother. Therefore, when we start employing this thought process towards these girls, they will see that there is a bigger world than just being that. Even beyond, they can see beyond being a mother, beyond being a wife. They can see that they can be photographers, and while they can pursue that, and while they are photographers, and in the long run they meet somebody who is willing to, who they can partner with. It's not a mercy to be married. It's not a mercy or an end game or what do you call it, an end result, like, oh, by the way, because you're disabled, there's no other way to live. Let me just give you a baby and, at least clap for me because I've taken one for the team. These girls can see a world that is bigger than just the confinements of the patriarchal lens. Number two, as parents, guardians, and community who live with these girls with disability, we need to be proactive and get into the enroll in boards and PTAs for this school. Not just enroll the girls in those schools, because those programs set up for those girls are pretty boring. School is boring. And if you're only focusing on academia, and these parents have just enrolled you in school, go back home and continue with their lives, and they are not enrolling in these boards and PTAs, the programs will not enlighten or even enrich these girls' minds to actually want to stay in school. If I remember very well, the reason why I enjoyed high school and even primary school was the co-curricular activities. But these co-curricular activities was enforced by the community, by the parents. Games, music festivals, talent shows. And this can be impacted by the community, because we are the ones who, instead of always looking at, oh, but what about, even just running, creating, we have the grounds, we have the school, invite the parents, the community, and we cheer them on for their talent shows. But if we don't participate in the boards and the PTAs, the school will just continue doing the academic program only. And without time, with no time, these girls get bored and drop out because there's nothing. If these people have, like you've mentioned, they have development issues or intellectual disabilities, they have dyslexia, that means they are really struggling with the academia. And based on the current academic and the education system, which is about passing exams, these girls will have nothing else to look forward to. Number 3 is assistive devices. I mean, I lost my sight 4 years ago. I attended rehabilitation about a year later, and we're using braille machines for the 60s. We are in the 21st century. So imagine me, who was using a laptop. I had the HP Spectra, which can fold 360. I am a geek. I love gadgets. And then I'm being minimized to using a brailler. It's ni kama kutumia typewriter of back in the day. Probably the ones the colonizers left in this country. So imagine people, these girls who have been, this is the only machine they know how to use. This is what they are giving these girls with disability to use against people who are using pens, biros, and whatevers. And eventually, now my niece, who is 11, they've changed they're now using smart, is it tablets? So if these girls are using tablets, and the girls with disability are using a brailler machine for the 1960s, they're not at par. So this person will get bored. I was bored 2 months. So imagine how those girls felt, because we were with girls, teenage girls who lost their sight at the age of 13, 14, 15. Some of them were 21. And that demoralizes them because we are using ancient assistive devices, wheelchairs that were used by people in the 50s. Those are the ones we are giving people with disability right now. So definitely they lose focus, they lose interest. But as a community and as a family, we research and we team up together with organizations and make sure that these girls have the assistive devices updated, current ones, so that it also excites their learning experience. Number 4, create after school programs that will initiate and help them see the value of the education. If there are no internships, if there are no programs that include them after school, what is the purpose of going to school then? I will drop out and get married then, or just stay at home, because there's nothing that's going to excite me about school. It's not just about school, by the way. Academia is just a part, a very small part. But if there are after school programs that can engage these girls and make them see life from a bigger lens than just academia, because academia can become very boring, and because you're limiting only people who are interested in academics. So what about these other people who have a creative stance? Because we are seeing these developments in other countries, in the westernized countries. Autistic children are even creating robots. People are doing amazing things with disability, but we are narrowing just the girls to a level, such a narrow level. But if we create these after school programs, these girls find it interesting, because then they know after school they did, they created this, or they built this, or they did this with this organization. Then they get encouraged, because they know when I go back to school, I'll choose this subject, I'll follow up on this, because I know now what I want to do. And then the 5th is abolish segregation. The more we segregate, the more these kids will never see themselves as one community. The first people to accept me were kids, were my nieces. Then their attitude did not change. They actually adapted very fast. So it means it's very possible. But so long as we segregate them, because we segregate children with disability from primary school to high school, then in campus, you tell them, oh, by the way, you're supposed to be with the rest of the everybody else to learn if you want to pursue a career in something other than the narrow front of either going to become a teacher, or you are taken to a technical institute for disabilities, metalwork, woodwork, beadwork, dressmaking, salon. I mean, We are in the 21st century. When they make this metal work, for who? Who's buying this metal? Who's buying this furniture they are making? Who's buying the shoes? So also just abolishing segregation and promoting integration of schools, even activities. When we are creating these activities, it's not for persons with disability, it's for everybody, including these girls with disabilities. They will be part and parcel. I went to high school and I realized I had never been integrated with a Muslim. So when I went to high school, by the time we're finishing Form 4, it does not even you don't recognize that, oh, by the Amina is Muslim. Up until when they are fasting is when you realize, oh yeah, you're Muslim. But that integration has helped us enforce that familiarity of not looking at people who worship differently from you as them. It is all of us. We are all in this country. We are all members of this global community. That's my contribution. Over to you, Elsie.
Amazing. I think everything you've said is the gospel. I don't want to dilute it by adding to it, but I really like that aspect of abolishing segregation. I think one of the things that is advocated for strongly in the African Union Disability Protocol is, instead of saying let's form special schools for persons with disabilities, is let us not accommodate, but rather let us create very inclusive environments where everyone can live comfortably, where everyone can learn comfortably. And instead of seeing learners with disabilities as people that are dragging the system, as the ones that need special, of course, they need extra attention because of the ability of lack of the ability. But instead of seeing them as people that need to be taken away from class so that they're given this other attention, how do we make sure that then the class has the ability to accommodate them? Raila Aulo, please hold the thought. We have a question, a Q&A session at the end of the presentations. If it is so pressing, you can put it on the chat so that you don't forget it. And I would also encourage everyone, because last time we held such a gathering, there was a bit of hiccups with registration. I had sent a registration link and people were not able to input their details. So if you can put it on the chat, it will be very good for me. So just put in your official names, your phone number, the county you're coming from, your gender, the gender you identify as, and what else is needed. Yes, for the purposes of registration. During that session, most of our speakers have raised very key issues in the role of the community in promoting the education of girls with disabilities. Felix has spoken about the emotional support, resource mobilization. Safin has spoken about community awareness in identifying persons living with disabilities. Eve has spoken about reintroducing the concept of it takes a village. And I think that is one of the aspects that we've been advocating at GforGirls Initiative in relation to transition of girls to high school, which one of the things the communities can do is when you identify a girl that was in primary school and all the kids have gone to secondary school and these girls are still in the society, what is your role as a neighbor? What is your role as a classmate? What is your role as a church member? What is your role as the chief, as the village elder? Do you just say, oh my God, that child has not gone to school, and continue with your day? You have a responsibility to report it to the police, to the chief, to the education authorities. You have a responsibility to address it with the parent. You have a responsibility to ask the child. They might have been taken to school by their parents, but they've run away and now they're living with someone else. You have a responsibility to make sure that girl goes to school. And that applies to persons living with disabilities, girls living with disabilities. She's also introduced the disability, the inclusion of persons living with disabilities or their parents and guardians in PTAs, in school boards, so that they are able to advocate for these children and learners. She has introduced the role of community in pushing parents to take their kids to school, assistive devices, keeping them updated. And maybe I will tie this to the next speaker, who's Buddy. Buddy, thank you. I can see you joined us. Assistive devices. She's spoken about how she's been using the Braille devices from the 90s as opposed to the updated ones. I know the human rights mechanisms, frameworks, the legal provisions call for reasonable accommodation and progressive accommodation. This means that the state or other members that are responsibility that have an obligation towards this right are supposed to provide this right according to their ability and slowly by slowly. So as I said during my introduction, and Buddy will touch on it when you're touching on the policies, how slow is slow and how fast is fast? Can Kenya argue that we cannot afford the newest devices, Braille devices? That is why we have the ones from the 90s. How slow is low? How fast is fast? How does the law protect the rights to education for girls with disabilities? Buddy, over to you.
Thank you, Madam. Good afternoon, all.
Good afternoon.
Thank you. Our program supposed to end at 13:30. We have less than 10 minutes to that time. So let me try to be as brief as possible so that all will be well. So first, we are going to talk about the different legal provision as far as education is concerned. First and foremost, allow me to start with the Nelson Mandela quote, which says that education is the only weapon that can be used to conquer the world. And in this phrase, it does not specifically say who can utilize education as a tool to conquer the world. So this means girls, ladies, women, and men can be equipped with education to conquer and venture in different spheres of the world. And then also on the same, also allow me to take you to the Sustainable Development Goals, which is Kenya is a signatory. And in line with Article 2 of the Constitution, every international law that Kenya ratifies becomes part of the Kenyan law. So under the Sustainable Development Goals, the very last goal talks about leaving no one behind. This means in all the 16 Sustainable Development Goals that were provided to be executed by member states of the United Nations until 2030 should be inclusive so that everyone becomes part and parcel of the same. So under the Sustainable Development Goals, goal number 4 talks about quality education for all, including girls with disabilities. So that's my opening remarks. Now taking you back to our Kenyan law, how it addresses the issue of education for girls with disabilities. I want to take you to Article number 27 of the Constitution of Kenya, which talks about equality before the law, and that every citizen has equal rights to enjoy the different freedoms and rights provided under the Bill of Rights in the Kenyan Constitution. And further, we are equally equipped that the state is supposed to take necessary measures, including affirmative action, to ensure that all persons, regardless of gender, religion, disability, sex, and so many other diversities, can enjoy them. So I want you to start. I want us to start with the Article 7, under the Republic. Article 7 talks about national languages and official languages. Why am I taking you there? Because for education to be meaningful, you'll agree with me that language is a very essential component to actualize or realize the same. So I want us to go back to the language article under the Kenyan Constitution with specific reference to sub-article 3B, where it talks about the nation or the state putting measures into place to ensuring that the state takes measure to ensuring that Braille, Kenya Sign Language, indigenous language, alongside other formats that can be utilized in I can't focus that much on I'm hearing. Okay, good. So when you type and it comes to the screen, I also have to listen what you say. That's why I sometimes lose concentration. But well and good, let's take it on. So under Article 7, the Constitution provides that the state takes necessary measures to ensure that Braille, Kenya Sign Language, indigenous language, alongside other digital formats that can be used to ensuring that communication is well to all people. And you know, in education, in learning, language is very essential. That's why I thought I should include this part of language in my submission. Again, back to other legal provisions under the Constitution. We have freedom of human dignity. For one's dignity to be well maintained, you know, education also plays a very critical role on the same. I also want to take you to Articles 53, 54, and 55 of the Kenyan Constitution. 53 addresses about children, 54 persons with disabilities, and 55 talks about the youth. And you'll agree with me that girls with disability form part and parcel of the groups I have mentioned. That is the children and Article 53, where 53 says that every child has a right to basic education. You go to Article 54, it talks about the need for the state to ensuring that persons with disabilities, which girls are included, are given the necessary support to ensuring that they get the necessary materials, support, and any other things that they may need to make their education a success. You go to Article 55, where it talks about the need for government to ensuring that the youth access material support, they get the necessary training so that all becomes well on their end. So these three articles that follow one another consecutively, starting from 53, 54, and 55, we have girls in one way or another associated with the same. And then apart from the same, the Constitution can't talk about everything in its fullest. It's just some provision, but we have what we call Acts of Parliament, which normally which normally provides far much details on what the Constitution cannot provide in details. So we have the Basic Education Act, whose main intention with regard to persons with disability or girls with disability in these aspects, it talks about the needs for children with or without disability to be given the free and basic primary education, which is a legal necessity. And the Act further refers us back to Article 53, which I have earlier taken you through. So we also have the Disability Act of 2003. We can also have time to go through the Children's Act. So these are some of the legal provisions that as Kenya, we can utilize to ensuring that girls with disabilities benefit fully from the education, which is a fundamental right, fundamental human right to every Kenyan. So basically, that's what I can be able to submit for now, for the interest of time. But just to remind you, to emphasize that when it comes to legal issues or legal provisions, mostly they refer to the human rights issues on a general perspective. So when we talk about children, when we talk about youth, when we talk about persons with disabilities, we have to understand that our subject matter of discussion are equally incorporated in the same. That's why I started with Article 27, whereby we talked about equal enjoyment of rights to all, including this particular right to education. So because of time, guys, allow me to stop at this juncture. And it has been great and an honor to have your audience. I thank you.
Asante sana, Buddy. Thank you so much for touching on the legal provisions. I think, as you said, the legal provisions, all of them, the international ones and the national ones, are all guided by the principle of non-discrimination, equality, and fairness to everyone alike, all human beings. I think the first article of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights says all human beings. So it does not say this person has special, one person has special, should be given special attention in regards to enjoyment of rights more than the other. And I think you've comprehensively covered that by just stating in the beginning, in the opening statement, when you say that Kenya has an obligation to implement any laws that they've ratified under the international human rights laws, and they're bound by the SDGs and everything else. Then touching on Article 27, which is equality before the law in our national constitution, and even taking measures such as affirmative action to ensure that historically marginalized groups enjoy rights in equality and equal measure to the rest of the groups. I think while you're touching on that, one of the major questions in my mind, and maybe you'll address it in your closing remarks, is how do we differentiate between affirmative action versus tokenism? When do we know that, well, this is inclusion for the sake of inclusion, or this is, I mean, sometimes I know it's spelled out, like in the 2/3 gender rule, you know, it's spelled out that 2/3 of the gender shall be, but then sometimes we see like tokenist approaches. I think one person posted on LinkedIn yesterday showing the Council of Governors, the new administration of the Council of Governors, and it only one woman out of I don't know how many men. I think it's about 20 people, and then there's one woman, and then asked, is this the equality we were talking about? So when do you know when it's affirmative action, when it is performative inclusion versus tokenism? Maybe you will address that during your closing remarks. You spoke about the national language. I actually am not sure if sign language or braille is included in the clause, and then bringing it to our attention brought that awareness of what are our national languages? How do we know these national languages? How are we made aware of these national languages? And if it's a national language, like, how is it included maybe in the Constitution? Can I read the Constitution in these national languages? If in any national address, of course, I see someone interpreting sign languages, everything in sign languages the way it's said, but does it cut across every other aspect, like in class, in schools, in learning institutions, in homes? Are even parents aware of these languages? Then you touched on the freedom of human dignity and touched on Article 53, 54, and 55 that touches on children, PWDs, and youths, bringing in, of course, the aspect of intersectionalities, that this girl with disability is also a child, is also a youth, might also have another aspect, another characteristic to them that makes them more vulnerable. And then, of course, we never got to touch on the Children's Act, but I would invite everyone to go through these policies, these acts. I know one of the recent developments that does not have a lot of ratifications from African countries is the African Disability Protocol. And maybe that's an area of entrance in advocacy and human rights promotion. So because of time and because we are nearing the end of our time, I would want to invite all the speakers, of course, one after the other, not at the same time, to share examples of successful interventions or programs towards ensuring that girls with disabilities access education. And in the same breath, so that is what I would do. I would invite all the speakers to give us an example of successful interventions or programs towards ensuring that girls with disabilities access education in a minute or so that we have a short and brief session where any of the listeners can ask a question or put a contribution, and then we close the sessions. So
Can I add something quickly, Elsie?
yes, Haron,
question?
you can.
Yeah, so maybe
1 minute, then invite the next guests, and we each have about 1 minute to address the interventions.
Yeah, so a quick one, maybe to reframe the question. Assume you are in the room with the MasterCard Foundation or these high-end corporates. MasterCard Foundation, Robert Bosch Foundation. How would you recommend ABCD? So when you are giving you a response, assuming there's a high level people or partners on board, and they are waiting for your feedbacks for them to either improve their programming or promote more of the inclusivity. So think about the MasterCard Foundation, the Robert Bosch Foundation, Belinda Mary, all those foundations. Think about it. Yeah. Back to you, Elsie, so that we can pass it over to the panelists.
Yes. Felix, Buddy, Eve, Safin, in that order. 1 minute each to address the interventions.
Okay. Thank you, Elsie. I think I've quite learned a lot, and at the same time, I was also taking some notes, also to add. One successful intervention that I can talk about is the effort to improve the education for the girls with disabilities. Just like I mentioned by the start of this program, that having to network with the institutions, learning institutions that provide the education, like I've just mentioned an example of it, Kibo School for the Visually Impaired. For this, we are able to provide mentorship once during the events like the Global Youth Day, and by sharing such platform, we are also able to mobilize resources. Resources is not always basically sometimes the money aspect of it, but even whatever we have, we were able to deliver in terms of the foodstuffs for the girl child for them when it's come to the nutrition and the wellness. Thank you very much.
Can I pass because I don't have any?
So let me pick it up. I think I was following Felix. I want to just emphasize on ensuring that community awareness programs are there. We make the communities and schools aware that we need, or there is essence of having these girls with disability going to school. We make an awareness to all our communities, all the family members, and everyone who is interacting with persons or girls with disability, that we need to have the importance of them going to school. We can as well have the community capacity build on how to interact with these girls with disabilities, so that this will ensure that all our girls, including those with disabilities, are empowered. So I will really emphasize on that area, because it's a really important, it's an important intervention that will help us ensure that all our girls with disability are also treated equally and their rights are defended. Thank you so much, Elsie.
Okay, sawa. Thank you so much for your contributions. Some of the interventions suggested are networking with learning institutions, mentorships, mobilizing resources, community awareness. If you also touched on just sharing your stories, you said you have a YouTube channel, and I found it as a very interesting perspective on sharing your experience, your lived experience, especially as someone who acquired disability later in life. Now I would want, in the interest of time, I would want to pass it over to the audience. I know, Raila, you did have a contribution, or I'm not sure if it's a contribution or a question, but anyone else, I'm going to take about 3 questions, contributions, before we move over to the closing remarks and call it a day. So Raila, maybe I would give you the opportunity now, and anyone else who wants to contribute, please just raise your hand, and then I'll give you the opportunity.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I lost connectivity, I think, while I was doing my introduction. My name is Raila Oro from Smart Eagle Girls CBO. Now, maybe I'll just go straight to the maybe successful interventions, noting the fact that some of the challenges, real-time challenges on ground, that these girls, either with disabilities, face in regards to the access to education. One of them we have is the poverty aspect. You see, this poverty, it can cause both. It's a cause, and again, it's a consequence of disability. So you see, this our girls, like now in our CBO that we recently started, but again now I had noted that we have in our CBO we have 3 girls with disabilities, and these girls were not going to school, you see, and some of the reasons were due to the nature of their background, the poverty aspect, and again they are teen moms. So you see, we have 2 aspects here. Number 1, we can say the pregnancy, and again the poverty. So these girls are just vulnerable. So in our CBO, we happen to have partnered, or we happen to have partnered with this institution called the Gates Africa Training Center. that recently advertised some vacancies to sponsor these teenage moms. So, you know, we have teenage moms, and again, some of them are disabled. So currently, we managed to enroll them in these training programs that they are undergoing. They are taking some technical courses, some in beauty, and again, some in these hospitality courses, you see. And that is a plus to us. So number one, the community within us are very ready to support these ladies or these girls. But now the awareness aspect, in that these people, they don't know that people are willing to support them. You see, they tend to hide in their vulnerability, whatever, because you find that when we don't come out, now I'm speaking as maybe a CSO, when we don't come out loud, and we do awareness, these disability awareness programs, maybe in the community, these girls won't find these opportunities. For instance, if we had not started our CBO, these ladies currently hawangekuwa wanaenda shule bado. You see, so it's just about us. Even you just do the bit that you can do. If you can help by bringing them, taking them to school, do that. If you can help by creating awareness, do that. If you can help by reducing the stigma and all the negative attitudes within the community and even within amongst their parents, do that. So it's just about do what you can do. And another thing is that people are ready and willing to help. We had just started, but again, now currently we are like, people want to come and support what we are doing. So I think that is what I have. And it's good if we join hands, because if you can support them,
Yeah.
elevate poverty in aspects of making them have access to this proper medical attention, even these hygiene products like sanitary towels, you can partner and join and support, and we move together. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Raila, for bringing up, I almost called you Baba. Thank you so much, Raila, for bringing that aspect of how poverty intersects with the rest of the vulnerabilities and how we can contribute to lessening the situation. Anyone else who has a contribution question, maybe? Our audience.
I'm seeing we have a hand there by Michelle Ominde.
Oh, sorry, I missed that. Yes, Michelle, please go ahead.
Thank you so much. Mine is just a contribution regarding in regards to what Eva said. I'm a student, and to what Eva said in introduction of new machines, there was this time we were doing an examination. Then there was a girl in the examination room who was visually impaired. Then the braille, while she was using the braille, it was making lots of noises. Then the other students were clicking and everything. So to me, I felt that the girl felt somehow stigmatized from the other from the rest of the students. And I think us as the community and those who are in the legal field should advocate maybe for other machines that can reduce the stigma that most of the students face in all their everyday undertakings. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michelle, for that addition. Thank you for also reminding us our conscious role as persons interacting with persons with disabilities, and how the stereotypes, our attitudes, and our actions towards people living with disabilities affects their everyday living experiences. I would want now to go straight away to closing remarks and invite all our speakers to give us a closing statement. I know we've had a very lengthy conversation. Yes, Priska?
Uh, Sorry, you're on the closing remarks yet. I wanted to contribute something.
Please
I
go
know for
ahead.
sure the conversation has been amazing, and I loved the aspects of the law. And then again, as we talk about inclusion, as we talk about cascading that to wherever grassroots level that we are working in, I'm just thinking right now, Kwale County does not have a disability policy or act. And as actors in this space, talking about children, just talking about inclusion, what exactly can we do? How can we bring out this conversation? How can we get to the space of saying, without this policy, this is where the discrimination is happening, or there is no budget for this, there is no budget for equipment. What are the steps we can take as actors in this space, as we are discussing here today, to ensure we bring it out in the limelight? Yeah, that's what I'm just thinking.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Priska, for that contribution. I think to all our guests and participants, Priska is the Executive Director at GforGirls Initiative. And thank you, Priska, for bringing that aspect of county legislations. Like, how do we trickle down the legislations from the international level to the domestic level, to now the county levels, because we know counties budget, counties form budgets within the frameworks that they have, legal frameworks that they have, that if they are budgeting for something, it has to be somewhere in the county laws. And the role of having a policy, a county policy in promotion of some of these issues. She has also brought about the aspect of, well, it has disappeared. The point I wanted to raise has disappeared, but I am sure that all of us have caught the points that she has put across. And now I want to go to the final closing remarks. As I had said earlier, all our speakers, I think I want to start with Haron, and then to all of our speakers. Final thoughts as we finish up. What is the one key takeaway you want us to go home with? Final thoughts. So I will start with Haron, then we can move to Felix, then Eve, then Buddy, and then Safin. Please take it away.
Hey, guys,
Keep it short.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. One of my parting shot from my side, I'm just trying to be more authentic, is that we as young leaders from marginalized community and region, this is our time for us to come together and create a safe, secured, and supportive network where every one of us can thrive and every one of us can get maximum support they need for them to make change. We are the only ones who know our only deep stories of our leadership, and it's us who will tell these stories to the world. So be authentic, be real, adopt the storytelling model, and use the digital spaces to share these stories. There's a demand of social inclusion, and most of the experts, government leaders, donors are looking for these stories. So let's go out, tell your own story, tell your own experience, tag those foundation, NGOs, and let's keep pushing and let's keep supporting each other. Thank you so much, and back to you, Elsie.
Asante sana, Haron. The value of storytelling. Maybe in another platform, you'll teach us how to storytell. Felix.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, the team, for providing this opportunity also to learn and to share from the rest of the team. My parting shot, I'll just be very brief because of time, is I want us to embrace the principle of equality and non-discrimination in our working spaces, and let us embrace and also support the institutions like the learning institutions, now that we've discussed what is more needed of the girls living with disability. From here, we should be asking ourselves, what are we going to do about it? Are we going just to be sitting here and listening to each other? Then we leave and we go back to our spaces as usual. What are we going? We
of the principle of non-discrimination in our everyday interactions. Eve.
First of all, I'd like to correct something that has been happening. It's not people living with disability or girls living with disability. Disability is not part of the household. It's girls with disability or person with disability. It's like a person with a car or a person with a house. It's the house. It's not the person. You know, so you can't say person living with a house.
Yeah.
You say person with a house or the person with the car. So it's persons with disability, PWD, not PWLD or PLWD. So also it starts with us. It starts with me. When I lost my sight, to first overcome internalized ableism. And what I have been hearing, even with the way we want to contribute to the community, all of us have a lot of internalized criticism. And for me, I had to overcome internalized ableism because I had to go overcome the stereotype, the mindset, the barriers internally before I can be able to even be a better version of myself. Because if I don't like myself, if I don't value myself, I'll not be able to value other people. And even all those people we are complaining of, it's because they're also fighting their own internal struggles. So even as we are, the 10 of us that are here, once we are able to overcome our own internal struggles, then we can extend the same grace to other people, whether it's disability or underserved communities in one way or another. Therefore, we spread that grace and continue preaching that it starts with each and every one of us. It starts internally, then you can extend it externally. So long as we have our own personal struggles and we are not overcoming those personal struggles, it will be very hard to exercise advocacy for other people because you yourself, you're not okay. So even when we are talking about taking care, offering mentorship, creating awareness, if I'm not aware, how will I create awareness? Do we actually go out of our way to read books on disability and understand the disabilities that are there? Do we know what having that disability means? I realized that I probably had dyslexia in high school, and that's why I really struggled with school. But all along, I thought, disabilities for those people over there, it can never be me. So once we are able to understand, it starts with us overcoming our own challenges and researching and reading and studying. It helps you grow and you become more aware of yourself, and then you become aware of the people around you. That's my contribution and my last remark.
Thank you so much, Eve. Thank you for correcting us. It's person with disabilities and not person living with disabilities. I think I'm a big culprit of that, of using persons living with disabilities, and also reminding us that we can only meet others at the point in which we've met ourselves, and the role that we have as individuals in fighting the stereotypes and the ableism within ourselves. I'll pass it over to Buddy. Buddy, if you can hear me. If Buddy is not ready, we can go to Safin and then come back to Buddy.
Okay, thank you so much, Elsie. My party short is that disability is not inability, and we have to just not point fingers at anyone, maybe the family members of the community. Let's start as ourselves with what we have to do, what we can be able to do to ensure that girls with disability are going to school and are accessing the adequate education as we need for the community. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Safin, for reminding us that it starts with us and we have a role to play in ensuring girls with disabilities access school. Buddy, I don't know if
Just
Buddy is
before,
able to. Yes, Eve.
I'd like also to, sorry, I'm becoming stubborn, but Safin, disability is not inability is a very, very distasteful quotation that does not read well with people who are actually disabled. It just, because we are the ones who go through those barriers. That disability is not necessarily the physicality, it is actually the barriers, the systemic barriers that have been placed. So telling a girl or even a boy, a child, a person with disability that disability is not inability, we know, but it's not us who have stopped ourselves from living, it's the system, it's the people. So I would always encourage people to look for other ways to encourage, but don't use that term. It just reads very badly, because we know that it's not an inability, but it's not us who are seeing the inability. It's the system and the barriers and the people.
Maybe if I can ask you, would you categorize it as a dog whistle statement?
Pardon?
I wanted to ask you, would you categorize it as a dog whistle statement? Does it reinforce the stereotypes and the discrimination
Yes.
that already occurs?
Yeah, because NGOs hide under that, and it makes it look like the person who's disabled is the one who is disabling themselves from proceeding or progressing or overcoming the challenge. But the person who's living with the person with the disability lives every day, and they know they are not they have dreams, ambitions. So you telling that person that disability is not inability, it's almost like telling women, but that's the reason why you guys are not, you've not invented anything. And they're like, we have invented something, what value do you bring to the table? We know what value you bring to the table. It's just because we've not highlighted it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So saying disability is not inability, especially from an undisabled person, it sounds like you're blaming the person who's disabled for feeling or being in that barrier of the, I don't know if I make sense.
Thank you so much for that clarification. I think as someone who's listened to NTV, abled differently features, and the term is thrown in all the time, disability is not inability. I think hearing it from your perspective definitely gives me a different outlook to the statement. I would want to close it. I think Buddy dropped out, and I would like to close this session today by thanking everyone for showing up. Thank you for all our speakers, for lending your voice, for lending your expertise, for lending your perspective on this topic. Thank you to all the organizers. Thank you to all the participants. Thank you to all the contributors. On behalf of GforGirls Initiative, on behalf of Network for Grassroots Organization, and on behalf of myself, I want to thank you and wish you a beautiful day. I know that we've recorded this this program, this session that we've had, we've recorded it and we'll be able to share with you via email and via other resources. I think even on LinkedIn, you'll see the post. If you've not shared your contacts and your details with me, you can still do so through any person that you know in this gathering. You can share them through the WhatsApp and then they can get it to me. And as we close, I would like to ask all of us to turn our cameras on and give our very able Haron Modena a minute or two to take a photo, a group photo for this session, and then everyone can leave at their own pleasure. Thank you so much. Haron, direct us when to smile and when to see smile sana.
Yeah, I'm waiting for Safin. Hi, Safin. We're waiting for your video. Hi, Safin.
She was in class. Rispa.
I'm
She's
here.
back.
Or should
Rispa.
or are you taking lunch na utuambii karibu? Okay,
Karibu.
let me quickly I'm trying to remove something quickly.